Sup everyone, Can't Overdo It with a new video, and in this one I'm going to rank every punishing hold on. I'm going to rank every piece of media that I got through in October 2025, which there's 18 entries to talk about, and 17 of them are punishing Grey Raven. Before running through everything, I do need to preface with this. For those who don't know, October was a really rough month for me. I lost a family member, culminating in me needing to drive to a different state unprompted, and after getting back home for a couple weeks, I quickly went back to the same state for my vacation, which had been scheduled about a year ago. Which is why this video took so long to even begin scripting. Because of that, my thoughts here won't be as fresh as I would like, but hey, whatever, we move. And this is where the video was supposed to start, but no. So, about 2 weeks ago now, I had recorded this, and I was planning to edit it when I had family up in late November for, Thanksgiving, obviously. That audio file corrupted, so I was not able to do that, and I was not going to record it with my family here, so I had to wait. And then I tried to record it a second time, and at some point, my earbuds just stopped working, so I couldn't record it anymore. So I did it a third time. After that, I decided, I was going to do something for me, so I bought a new microphone, which is what I'm using now. The problem is that now this makes this the fourth time that I have read this script. I am in a fantastic mood, and I do really apologize that this video did come out so late. Obviously, like I talked about before, I did have some, real life things that, quite frankly, YouTube is not as important to me as. So obviously I was going to go make sure that those were my priority and then come back over here when I was able to do that. And now I am. So yeah, this video is very late. I apologize. I hope it won't happen again, but we will see. But okay, let's just do the thing. I promise this was not on purpose. However, miraculously, the worst piece of media that I got through this month is the only non-PGR content I finished. At 18, I have the Fishman Island arc in One Piece. I'm manga only for One Piece. I've little to no interest in watching the anime, so if the adaptation is a boon to the arc, I wouldn't know, and it doesn't play any role in my thoughts here. Furthermore, it's my understanding that Fishman Island is pretty widely regarded as one of the lesser One Piece arcs. To which, I mean, yeah, kind of. For me, it is above the likes of the Sabaody Archipelago and Long Ring Longland, but it isn't by much, the main contributing factor of which being the antagonists. Fishman Island as a concept is fine enough, the backstory with Queen Orihime was solid, Luffy's dynamic with Wimpy was pretty wholesome, and as a Sanji top 1 truther, yeah, he's also in the arc. Look, it's looking a little grim, but he's still at the pinnacle of the Straw Hats for me. One must first get to the base of the mountain to reach the peak. The little scene with Robin at the end of the arc was also fairly interesting with, like, Joy Boy and stuff like that. But then we get to the likes of Hody Jones, who was just super middling. And we have the Stalker guy, who just sucked. And we also have the Mud guy, who, yeah, he was terrible. He super sucked. For me, Fishman Island is not the worst One Piece has to offer, but it is not at all far off, and I think what would add to a general disdain for the arc is the level of quality dropping off as quickly as it did. We're off the heels of a fantastic stretch of arcs with the likes of the Amazon Lily, Impelled Down, and Marineford, and then we get Fishman Island. Look, all in all, I didn't like Fishman Island, but I would also hesitate to say that I actively disliked it. If nothing else, my level of innate vitriol is certainly easier to find in Long Ring Longland, but at this point I'm only writing it into the script to have an excuse to fling tomatoes at the worst One Piece arc. 5.5 out of 10. And now we've made it to the top 17, which is all just punishing Grey Raven. Yeah, you really, you can't make this shit up, dude. Straight up, the entry that we're about to talk about should be a spot higher. The problem is that I genuinely just don't really remember it. So the worst piece of punishing Grey Raven content that I got through this month ends up being the Chrome Arclight Interlude. I remember Chrome saying, "I live in an incredible world, surrounded by incredible people." That's literally it. That's the whole script for this. This interlude was super unmemorable to me. At the time, I gave it a 7.5, so I'm gonna drop it down to a 7 because clearly, at least I thought it was good, but I don't remember it. 7 out of 10. Moving up to 16, I have Floating Record 00, Reveries with a Whale. I didn't like Pulao's gameplay personally. The idea of a sentient panda and Will was funny, but really this should be higher, if not for MC Solar and his cronies. I actually found their over the top banter kind of entertaining, but the boss fight for me at least was just not as fun at all. The mechanics were dumb to me, and with the added layer of being forced to play Pulao, it was just a not fun experience, and it actively detracted from my enjoyment of the story as a result. The bit towards the end with getting the whale tier was fine enough. The Reveries with a Whale is a story of some small great moments with some really low lows in the gameplay department. Overall, it evens out to a 7 out of 10 for me. Next on the list at 15, I have Qu Pavo Interlude, which really is one of these cases where I appreciate it more than I like it. This idea will come up in a later video ranking my top 100 series. Oh my god, I have to still do that. I can appreciate the quality of the writing here. I find Qu herself to be a rather profound character, and her soliloquy towards the end, quote unquote, knowledge claimed there was no purgatory, there was no hell, but now I see it, hell is right in front of me. That shit was good. I loved how they managed to recontextualize her motives from the main chapters. Again, I did like this interlude, but it's probably, objectively, better than I'm scoring it. 7 out of 10. This one kind of sucks to talk about because I do like it, but at 14, I have the worst extra story so far, in my opinion. That being Extra Story 03 Lost Chapter. Villiers was a unique presence here. I do like the lore drop on behalf of Moyan, where she talks about how the punishing virus was the result of a failed government experiment. Having this terrible tragedy be linked to something rather than just we live in a world where the punishing virus happened because yes is really cool. Ku's speech about the strength of Kowloong was great, and getting to hear VA work is always a W since we rarely get that in the story segments. The robot subplot was actually kind of endearing, and the ending segment with my goat Watanabe was also just really great. 7.5 out of 10. At 13, I'm going to keep this one super short. It'll be the shortest one on here. Arcade Anima on the Brink of Abyss. It was more alpha content, more alpha backstory. You'll love to see it. We'll talk about it later. 8 out of 10. At number 12, I have Changyu Qilin Interlude. The real bread and butter of this is obviously Changyu's dynamic with Huainan? Who H-Man. He's H-Man. And really, as much as this is Changyu's interlude, H-Man really stole the show, in my opinion, and was the star here. Although I did like Changyu saying, there is no wonderland or paradise out there, there's only death and uncaring cold, we're at the point in the list where, even though I like the stuff that we're talking about, I just want to rush through it so that I can get to the really good PGR stuff later. 8 out of 10. Just outside of the top 10 at 11, I have Extra Story 01 Grand Blue, aka the Punishing Grey Raven Beach episode, which is just peak in theory, especially with the Alpha skin. Cinema. The arc was fun. We got to see Alpha and Watanabe meet up, Roland was fun, the beach theme was well done and goofy, but the star was so obviously Vera. The narration about how this location brings about inner peace, one without pain, being a purgatory for Vera, I found so interesting and kind of funny, but interesting. We'll get more into her ideology later on, but this idea that she seeks the battlefield because feeling pain is better than feeling nothing at all is super fascinating, and her later CG with her crazy batshit eyes is also great. Oh, and Lamia's dialogue be a little bit too fucking relatable, dude. I quote, "But there will be work after this break. No, cruel world, despair." It don't get no more relatable than that, folks. And also, yeah, Nanami was here because, of course, Nanami was here. But this is not her best showing. We will unpack her later. 8 out of 10. On to the top 10, we have one that I liked a lot more than I expected to, and we have Pulao Dragontoll Interlude. The story of Yo-Yo and Han Ying was just so precious, the whole thing, where it became clear at this point, as it had beforehand, that Punishing Grey Raven likes to take the Project Moon approach of filling a character with joy and whimsy and then viciously tearing them apart in their backstory for the hell of it. Unlike with Changyu's interlude, where H-Man really stole the show, for me, Pulao's interlude was more both her and Han Ying stealing the show, which is why I have it solidly higher here at an 8.5 out of 10. And finally, in the top half of the list, at number 9, I have Camu Crocotta Interlude, which I'm pretty sure I read a lot later than I was supposed to, but fuck it, we ball. Mao Zhen here was a fine side character, but Camu's story was just really great. Camu was a much more complex figure than I expected him to be, and his conclusion in this interlude is absolutely incredible. I wasn't ready for it, man. I'd like to see how you live through the world, teach me how to love the world. It's fantastic stuff, man. This one's going to be super short again. At number 8, I have Lucia Plume Interlude. This was right off the back of Chapter 12, which we'll talk about, but it was great. The formation of the Grey Raven Squad was shown here, and her light as a feather, the heavens within reach quote at the end was great stuff. The hidden note activation of fighting 10 in-game units back to back without going below half HP, and then a boss fight at the end was certainly something for sure, though. 8.5 out of 10. At number 7, we have what would have been my guess for the best interlude before reading any of them, but it's not, even though it's still really damn good. I have the Luna Laurel interlude, which again, I expected to be great, and lo and behold, it was. Luna has the least tragic PGR backstory, Trust. Her Is This Me moment was great, and her later An Eternal Paradise for You and Me was also great. I wish I was more endeared to her character, but what we got was fantastic content, and it's probably about what I expected. 8.5 out of 10. So, this one, for number 6 here, the script is actually longer, but I'm going to cut it down a lot because I'm looking at the rest of the script, and we only have like the 5 after this, right? We're not even halfway through the script. So let me just make this one quick. At number 6, I have Rosetta Rigor Interlude, and obviously it was great. We're gonna get more into Rosetta later, so I'm gonna keep it brief. Young Rosetta and how she became who she is now, peak, and the whole scene towards the end, fantastic. 8.5 out of 10. You know, you would think that recording the same video 4 times, it would get more fun, but you know, shockingly, it doesn't. Who could have imagined? Now in the top 5, and with these top 5, we have 3 main story chapters, 1 extra chapter, and 1 interlude. Perhaps unsurprisingly, we have the last interlude to talk about here, Vera Rozen Interlude, which for me so far is the single best interlude in PGR. It's fucking incredible. The way that they managed to completely justify her insane ideology is insane. Up to this point, the main thing that defined Vera to us is pain. She's essentially a walking contradiction in the sense that she's both a masochist and a sadist, which, how the hell does one go from that to actually defending her ideology? What kind of backstory leads to that outcome? And the answer is the same as literally everything else in PGR. Tragedy. Vera went through multiple teams, and yet in all of those teams, everybody but her would die, to the point where she garnered the title Red-Headed Death. She reminds me a bit of Gabira from Project Moon. Hold on, stay with me for a minute. Where she's completely tunnel visioned on eliminating these foes consumed by the punishing virus, that the punishing virus ruined her entire life. Everything that she despises in the world is a result of the punishing virus, and the reason that people hate her because of, you know, the whole thing of everybody on her team dying constantly is the fault of the punishing virus. So the corrupted act as a perfect vessel for her to unleash her wrath on. But for me, the part of the interlude that struck me the most was her CG. Her monologue here sounds like the deranged soliloquy of a madman, but in context it makes perfect sense and it fits her to a T. Every action, her whole person, was born because of pain. The living feel pain, but not mere things. Lifeless things are without form, without self, devoid of everything. Unlike mere things, she can feel pain. Even the pain of others, too. Alright, I'll live. I'll live and feel the pain you cannot feel. I'll pillage all that you'll never own again. Her red bangs, wet with vital fluid, barely conceal a pair of sparkling eyes. She is grinning a wide, unhinged smile, a ghoulish sight contrasting the dead body surrounding her. She is smiling, just like death itself. What I like about this interlude so much, and what makes it the best interlude in PGR for me, is the amount of development that we get here. Vera goes from this unlucky soldier surrounded by death and eventually ostracized by those around her, condemning the punishing virus for making people hate her. into becoming this martyr figure, this girl who knows that corpses can't feel pain, and that pain is what makes her alive, so she relishes in the feeling of both her own the pain and the pain of others as proof of her life, and as a selfish wish to carry on the lives of others, doing what they no longer can. 9 out of 10. I actually really debated moving this one up, but it didn't feel right. So at number 4, as much as I love it, I have to have Extra Story O2 Firn Night, which will hopefully be shorter than the last entry. I didn't check actually. Maybe I should have. Firn Night is uncontestedly the best extra story for me so far, and a huge part of that is the dynamic between Nanami and Martin. Don't know Martin? It's a giant fucking mech bear. It is so fed up with Nanami shit so quickly, and yet completely acquiesces to her, letting her just kind of do her own thing. This is the most enjoyable part of PGR for me, bar none. Nanami constantly calling him by the wrong name, Martin trying to explain what is going on multiple times, Nanami getting actually mad, Lamia calling Nanami a weirdo only for Nanami to retort, "Look at your butt, you're the weird one," all to lead up to this fucking insane "it's okay now" moment from Nanami. What the fuck did I just read? Did Nanami catch a W? Look, Nanami is genuinely great. She's almost as eccentric as Don Quixote, whilst also being a lot funnier, a lot quicker, and a hell of a lot less annoying, in my opinion. But here's the thing. All of this has been the hidden side, because the first half of Her Night is this deep tragedy featuring the likes of Rosetta and Commandant. On that front, the battle with Amberia was handled very well. Having essentially these two boss fights that are interwoven was so cool to see. Rosetta's "I'm sorry" was beautiful, but even more beautiful than that was the nuance hidden in "kinda lucky I managed to catch you before the cave collapsed, Commandant," which for me hit so fucking hard. Throughout the story, Rosetta has constantly mentioned her lack of luck. She has this incredibly pessimistic outlook on the world, constantly referring to both herself and the world itself as unlucky. Seeing her even consider using the word lucky in a positive connotation was unironically peak. It was awesome. Fern Night is bizarre because half of it is this serious, melancholic tragedy with beautiful nuance and great gameplay. And the second half was this insane, fun ride with what genuinely might constitute as my favorite PGR dynamic. I'm so dead as Martin the Goat, 9 out of 10. Now for the top 3, and I can't believe this. Somehow, in a list filled with PGR, we actually have the 3 main story chapters that I got through this month, which is genuinely surprising given the discrepancy between the side and main content up to this point. But we have an interesting dichotomy on top of that. Chapter 11 was the most enjoyable, Chapter 12 peaked the highest, and Chapter 13 was the most intriguing. But at 3, the worst main chapter of PGR I got through this month ends up being Chapter 11, Nona, Ouroboros. Like I said, this is the most I've enjoyed any main chapter of Punishing Grey Raven up to this point. The ridiculousness of Camu and Lucia dressing up was just super funny. The story of Huakshu started here as well, and it was genuinely interesting. And obviously, it would later be expanded. I really liked Ku's. I'm glad that at least in the end, I gave you true freedom. I liked that the Commandant started getting more focus, which, quick sidebar, I thought it was Commandment for the longest time, but no, it's Commandant. I literally, like, for the first, like, probably 10 chapters, I read it as Commandment. Anywho, the stealth mission was cool, and I found it fucking hilarious that the game made a whole ass PowerPoint presentation to teach people how to do a stealth mission. That is peak unintentional comedy. All in all, Chapter 11 is the start of a great trend for a Punishing Grey Raven uprising. Kinda started at 9, but even here I acknowledge that up to this point, Chapter 11 had been the best chapter. 9 out of 10. And it was. At that point, 11 was the best chapter. And then I read more chapters, which, now that we're here, this one was a debate for me. I did kind of always know that 11 would be my number 3 on this list, but ultimately, at the runner-up spot, the second best piece of media that I got through this month ends up being Chapter 13, False Ascension. To preface this, and just get it out of the way, I gave up very quickly on exploration mode. I damn near exclusively played standard. That being said, the narrative here was the most interesting in PGR for me. We got to see some Bianca content before finding out that it wasn't Bianca content at all. That was a tragedy. But in part 2, we get this segment when the Grey Raven Squad is in a city with a river of blood turning out to be a high concentration of the punishing virus, which, again, was super interesting to me. To see that the virus was biologically evolving in this manner, it also led me to theorize a bunch, which was super fun. Here's an excerpt from me theorizing while playing the chapter. Essentially, look at this as a look way into my little diary that I have, you could say. Okay, so what I assume is happening here is that it's basically a war for Earth where the Ascendants, led by Luna, are trying to flood the planet with this crimson liquid that at least consumes dead things. Whether it's corrupted, constructs, or just average people, it doesn't really matter. What does matter is that it's using those consciousnesses to lure more people to the tide. Voices of the dead are able to be heard from it. Whether or not the red liquid itself kills things, I'm not 100% sure, but it is a very high concentration of punishing virus, so, yeah. Anyways, I think they're trying to flood the whole planet eventually, turn all of those who wish to survive into more ascendants and live in quote-unquote peace. Essentially, they've given up on humanity, so rather than fighting the punishing virus, they let it become their strength and become the enemies of humanity in order to, well, for all intents and purposes, become humanity. Meanwhile, Babylonia, a giant space colony, I'm not really sure if there are others yet, but I kind of just assume that there are. Babylonia is trying to stop the Ascendants, despite the fact that they are relatively safe in space, at least from the punishing virus itself. But they want to reclaim Earth, because, like, fucking obviously they want to reclaim Earth, come on. So I think that if we're going based on the assumption that this flood is planned, which I assume it is, this is basically just the Ascendant's way of saying, nah, fuck you, we're gonna flood the planet with this toxic ass liquid, let's see you try to reclaim it now. But to the same token, I'm not even sure if Luna's in control of the Red Tide, or if it has its own consciousness or anything to that effect. Moving on, though, we get to the Ascendants directly and begin Lucia's canto. Roland is entertaining here, but obviously I'm gonna focus on Alpha, which I clearly knew to be a version of Lucia from damn near the start, but having her here and to have this culmination of her clearly resenting Lucia was really great, referring to her as weak, naive, gullible, claiming that Lucia, quote, knows nothing. The Commandant gets a bit more to do here as well, and I'm really hoping they continue this trend, where the Commandant is really coming into their own as an actual character rather than just a complete self-insert. And then we get to stage 20, aptly titled Lucia, where I mean it was peak, obviously. Your hope won't save you, so drown in the goddamn truth from Alpha. It was absolutely fantastic. And really, I mean, I'm just gonna say it like it is. Alpha's the best PGR. No, that's not it. It really, I mean, I'm gonna just say it like it is. Alpha's just PGR Archer from Fate, and I am so fucking here for it. Once I catch up to PGR, I'll probably do an Archer versus Alpha edit, but I love the concept here, where they took Lucia, split her into two separate characters that walk very different paths, but both paths make sense, and the story is better for it. Especially since Alpha is my favorite antagonist in PGR so far, with her only competition being the other highlight of Chapter 13, Roland. Roland is a very enigmatic figure so far in PGR. He clearly has a deeper layer of complexity that he hints at but is yet to reveal. He plays the eccentric villain pretty well, and I'm positive he'll get his own dedicated arc in the future. Super looking forward to it. 9 out of 10. But here we are, the best piece of media that I got through in the month of October 2025 is Chapter 12, Kowloong Metropolis. Who would who would have thought? If I'm keeping it real, I found Chapter 12 to be less consistent than the last 4 entries that we've talked about. However, man, that fucking finale, holy shit. Who takes the lead here talking about the Tabula Akasha, essentially her answer to the punishing virus, stuffing people into different space entirely so that they can live in a world without the virus. AKA the final Honkai Impact third arc, but we'll talk about that in another video or other videos. Of course, Lucia shuts her down with "You're just afraid of facing the future." I really could get into things I like about this arc, the build-up, the sheer amount of characters, and the interwoven narratives. I mean, this chapter is just epic. That's how I would describe it. It's just epic. But I'm only going to talk about the ending. The cutscene with Lucia at the end was absolutely incredible and is pretty easily the single greatest moment in PGR as of now. Her saying, "but still, I'm afraid," after the cutscene was also just really great. I'd be remiss to not mention the absolutely hauntingly beautiful Hikari Reborn soundtrack. easily the best piece of music in PGR so far, and it's a genuine tragedy that I can't make it my menu music like that specifically. I know that I can make it Hikari and then it'll go there at the end, but like no, I want the actual one, you know? Speaking of tragedy though, the sacrifice of Lucia here, of casting away her memories, it was just done so incredibly well. There's this stigma about PGR that the beginning of it is bad and that it does get better, but you have to stick with it. For me, this isn't really necessarily the case. I liked my whole experience with PGR from chapter 1 to 13, now including the absolute shitload of side content I've read. With that being said, I do understand the sentiment. For me, chapters 1 to 8 were fine, they were passable. 9 to 10 start becoming this transitionary period where the quality is getting better, but 11 to 13 is genuinely great, and I don't see the level of quality dropping anytime soon. The plan is to be back on PGR after finishing at least chapter 35 of HI3, but I also might hit Amphorius on HSR before jumping back in, which is in the script. I'm actually changing this because I just really want to play PGR again. So I have, at the point of this recording, finished Honkai Impact 3rd, Part 1, like Chapter 35. So I'm done with that. I don't need to worry about it. I'm going to now, once I eventually get back into, like, consuming gacha games, I will be back on Punishing Gray Raven. I'm going to play it up to, I believe, Chapter 17 is, like, the end of, like, the next arc would be, like, the next good stopping point. And then I'm going to go through Amphorius after that. So if you're really looking forward to my thoughts on Amphorius, you're going to have to wait a bit. Sorry. Anyways, regardless, I love Punishing Gray Raven. I'm so glad I got to talk about it so much in this video. And Chapter 12 of Punishing Gray Raven is the best piece of media that I got through in October 2025. And that's all. Look, this month was really hard on me, and obviously this video is coming out a lot later than anticipated, but I hope you all enjoyed me yapping about a very great game. I then go on to talk about what you can expect in the next video, but I literally have a list right in front of me, so I'm just gonna tell you all the media that we're gonna be talking about in the next video, which I normally wouldn't do, but because this video is coming out so fucking late, I can. So in alphabetical order, we have Breaking Bad Season 1, Chainsaw Man Movie, the Rize arc, Dark Souls 3, Honkai Impact 3rd, Chapter 32, Honkai Impact 3rd, Chapter 33, Honkai Impact 3rd, Chapter 34, Is Love the Answer, Maybe Meant to Be, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint Web Novel Arc 1, and Red vs. Blue Season 2. As for future videos, I have a bit of a backlog right now. I have a Dark Souls 3 boss ranking video I know I want to do, and it's already scripted out. I want to make a dedicated Elden Ring video just yapping about my thoughts on the game. We still have the November and the December media vids for this year, but there are also 2 other important videos that I'll be making. Firstly is the top 10 media of 2025. This will be a list solely composed of media that I got through in 2025 specifically, i.e. it won't be my top 10 favorite series as of 2025, but rather my top 10 that I got through this year. But speaking of that, I have begun the process of making my top 100 series as of 2025 video, which will be a behemoth. I made a poll asking if y'all wanted parts or just a whole vid, and a whole vid is what won out in the end, so that's what I'm going with. As for a release window on these 2 videos, the top 10 media of 2025 will definitely be out first, hopefully in early January. And the 100 series video, I would say expect sometime in the first 3 months of 2026, between January and March is what I'm hoping. I am going to be doing it all in one video though, so once it's out, and I don't got to worry about it, and you guys don't need to worry about it, it'll be great. Life is slowly but surely getting back on track. But it's 4 in the morning, and because of how late I decided to do this, because of all the things that I mentioned in the intro, I'm gonna go take a break and then record the November media video. So that's all I got for you guys for now. As always, take care, y'all.